Hello, this is Patient X Files, where the rare becomes real, when childhood dies overnight. I never believed in monsters under the bed, until I met Sarah. Her mother called me at 3 a.m., sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words. "Doctor, please. Something is happening to my daughter. She's changing. Every hour she looks older. I don't know what's happening to my baby." I thought it was hysteria, a mother's panic over her child's illness. I've seen it before. Parents calling in the middle of the night convinced their child is dying from a simple fever. But when I arrived at their house that morning, I walked into a nightmare that medical school never prepared me for. Sarah was sitting on the couch playing with her dolls. She looked up at me and smiled. A normal, sweet 7-year-old smile. But her face, God, her face was wrong. The skin around her eyes was creased with lines that shouldn't exist for decades. Her hair, once golden and silky, was streaked with premature gray. Her small hands were veined and spotted like an elderly woman's. "Hello, doctor," she said in her little girl's voice. "Mommy says I'm sick, but I feel fine, just a little tired." I felt my blood turn to ice. In 30 years of pediatric medicine, I had never seen anything like this. Children don't age, not like this, not overnight. Her mother, Janet, pulled me aside. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. "It started 5 days ago," she whispered. "She complained about joint pain. I thought it was growing pains. Then I noticed the first wrinkle. Just one by her left eye. I thought I was imagining things." She showed me photos on her phone, day by day, hour by hour. Sarah's transformation was documented in cruel detail. In the first photo, she was a normal 7-year-old, gap-toothed and giggling. By the 3rd day, she looked 12. By the 5th day, she could have passed for 16. Now, looking at her sitting there with her toys, she appeared to be in her late teens, maybe early 20s. But she was still 7 inside, still asking for her teddy bear at bedtime, still afraid of the dark. "The other children at school don't want to play with me anymore," Sarah told me later as I examined her. Her voice carried a sadness that cut through my professional composure. "They say I look scary. Tommy Peterson called me a witch." I ran every test I could think of. Blood work, genetic screening, hormone panels, brain scans. The results were impossible. Her cellular structure was aging at an exponential rate. Her telomeres, the protective caps on chromosomes that shorten with age, were degrading faster than anything in medical literature. It was as if someone had pressed a fast-forward button on her biological clock. But here's what haunts me most about Sarah's case. It wasn't just her body that was changing. Her mind was starting to fracture under the weight of premature maturity. She would ask questions that no 7-year-old should know to ask. About death, about loneliness, about what it means to lose yourself, ooze. "Dr. Reynolds," she said to me on day 6, "why do grown-ups pretend they're happy when they're not? I can see it now in their eyes. The sadness they hide." I had no answer for her. How do you explain adult disillusionment to a child who's being forced to experience it in real time? Her parents were falling apart. Janet stopped eating, stopped sleeping. She would sit by Sarah's bed for hours, stroking her daughter's graying hair and crying silently. David, Sarah's father, threw himself into research, desperately searching for answers that didn't exist. He printed out hundreds of medical papers, stayed up all night reading about progeria, Werner syndrome, anything that might explain what was happening to his little girl. But this wasn't progeria. Progeria children age slowly over years, and they retain their childlike appearance in many ways. This was something else entirely, something unprecedented. On the 7th day, Sarah woke up looking 30 years old. Her childhood was gone, stolen by a biological catastrophe that science couldn't explain or stop. She stood in front of the mirror in her pink princess bedroom, surrounded by stuffed animals and fairy tale books, and stared at the stranger looking back at her. "I don't remember being young," she whispered. "It feels like a dream that's slipping away." That's when I realized we weren't just losing Sarah's childhood. We were losing Sarah herself. The rapid aging wasn't just physical. Her memories were becoming confused, adult thoughts overlaying childhood experiences until she couldn't tell which were real. I made the hardest decision of my medical career. I called in specialists from around the world, endocrinologists, geneticists, neurologists. We turned Sarah's case into a medical emergency, a race against time to understand what was happening before it was too late. Dr. Elena Vasquez from Barcelona was the first to identify the culprit. A rare genetic mutation so uncommon it had never been documented before. A single protein in Sarah's system had gone haywire, triggering a cascade of cellular breakdown that mimicked decades of aging in days. "It's like her body received a signal to age," Dr. Vasquez explained. "But instead of years, it's happening in hours. We've never seen anything like it." The treatment was experimental, dangerous, and our only hope. A combination of genetic therapy and cellular regeneration techniques that existed more in theory than practice. We had one chance. If it failed, Sarah would continue aging until her young body simply couldn't sustain life. Her parents signed the consent forms with shaking hands. Sarah, now looking like a woman in her 30s, held her teddy bear and asked if she could have ice cream after the procedure. The childlike request from an adult face was heartbreaking. The treatment took 18 hours. I stayed in the hospital the entire time, watching monitors, checking lab results, praying to whatever forces might be listening. Sarah's parents never left the waiting room. Other families came and went, but they remained, holding on to each other like shipwrecked survivors clinging to driftwood. When Sarah opened her eyes after the procedure, she looked confused. The adult features were still there, but something in her expression had changed. The premature wisdom, the haunted look in her eyes had softened. "Daddy?" she said in a voice that sounded more like the 7-year-old she should be. Did I have a bad dream? The treatment had worked, partially. Sarah's aging process had stopped, but she was trapped in the body of a 30-year-old woman. Her mind, however, was healing. The confusion was lifting, and slowly her childhood memories were returning. Over the following months, Sarah learned to navigate her new reality. She couldn't return to 2nd grade. She couldn't play with children her age because physically she looked like their teacher. But inside, she was still a little girl who loved fairy tales and chocolate chip cookies. Her parents homeschooled her, and gradually Sarah adapted. She learned to see her situation not as a curse, but as a unique perspective on life. She became an advocate for other children with rare diseases, using her unusual experience to bridge the gap between childhood innocence and adult understanding. "I remember what it feels like to be small and scared," she told me during a follow-up appointment a year later. "But I also understand now what the grown-ups were trying to protect me from. I can help other kids who are afraid of being different." Sarah's case changed my understanding of human resilience. She could have been broken by what happened to her. Instead, she chose to find meaning in her suffering. She started a foundation for children with rare genetic disorders, became a spokesperson for medical research funding, and somehow, despite everything, maintained the wonder and joy that make childhood precious. The medical community studied her case for years. Papers were published, theories were proposed, and her genetic mutation was added to the textbooks. But what struck me most wasn't the science. It was Sarah's refusal to let her circumstances define her limitations. She never got her physical childhood back, but she proved that the essence of who we are isn't tied to our appearance or even our age. It's something deeper, something that can survive even the most impossible circumstances. Today, Sarah is 25 years old chronologically, but she still carries the wisdom of someone who has lived through the unimaginable. She's married now, to a man who fell in love with her spirit rather than her appearance. She can't have children of her own due to the genetic therapy, but she's adopted 3 kids who needed someone who truly understood what it meant to be different. When people ask her if she's angry about what happened, she always gives the same answer. I wouldn't change it. It made me who I am, and I like who I am. Sarah's story isn't just about a rare genetic condition. It's about the power of human adaptability, about finding strength in the most devastating circumstances, about the difference between aging and growing up. She taught me that childhood isn't a time period. It's a way of seeing the world with wonder and possibility. And that gift, once truly understood, can survive anything, even the impossible. Sometimes the most profound truths come from the most unlikely teachers. Sarah was 7 years old when she taught me that growing old is mandatory, but growing up is a choice. She chose to grow up with grace, wisdom, and an unshakable belief in the beauty of being different, in a world that often fears what it doesn't understand. Sarah became living proof that our greatest challenges can become our greatest strengths. Her childhood may have been stolen by genetics, but her childlike wonder never left her. She simply learned to carry it in a different package. The last time I saw Sarah, she was reading a fairy tale to her adopted daughter. Her voice carried the same joy and enthusiasm I remembered from that first day, when she was still 7 years old on the inside and outside. Some things, I realized, are truly ageless. If you enjoyed this video, please support the channel. Like, share, and subscribe. Please write a comment what you think about this video.